وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. If there is one word today that is setting off alarms and shock waves throughout the world, it's the acronym ISIS. How many of you have heard this term? Okay, I'd be pretty shocked if you haven't. The acronym ISIS stands for Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It's also called ISIL, ISIL, which stands for Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. The Levant meaning that whole area of Sham, Syria and greater Syro-Palestine. The reason why I want to talk about it is that it's on everyone's mind, it's on everyone's tongues. It's being talked about in schools, it's being talked about in social circles, it's being talked about everywhere. It's all over the media, it's the talk of the town, it's the talk of the world. So how do we see it, how do we assess it? And what's the bottom line with these people? And we as Muslims who are either born here or have grown up here or are growing up here, we who are so far away, yet everyone seems to expect to get some answers from us. How do we look at it? Yesterday I had a very interesting phone conversation with a gentleman who called and said he had some concerns and questions and he wanted some time from me. So I asked him if he was from the media. He said, no, I'm not from the media, I'm just a concerned citizen of the world. And there is so much speculation and so many opinions being thrown around. I just want to come to the source and clarify some things for my own mind. He says, I'm born Canadian, I have Muslim friends, and there is a lot that's being said right now about this Islamic State. And I see two kinds of parties in the Muslims. There are those that are advocating it, and there are those that are openly opposing it. I just want to hear something from an authority. And he says, you are looked at as an authority in the religion, so I'd like to hear your explanation. How does Islam actually view all of this? I said, okay, fine, but let's put all the propaganda aside for 1 minute. The propaganda of good versus evil and radicalization of humanity and Muslims in particular, and terrorism and so on and so forth. Let's put aside the propaganda and try to get to the facts. Because as long as our minds are clouded with propaganda, we can never understand the facts. And most of what we see in the mass media is some form of propaganda. It's affected by certain policies, certain lobbies, certain political movements. And it's giving people what they want to hear. So I said, there's no doubt that virtually every country that has been formed in the world has been formed as the outcome of a war. There's no doubt about that. Okay, America is the result of many, many wars. The European countries. Go on, start naming countries. Historically speaking, you can go back as far as you want into the history of the human race, and you will find that virtually every country that has come into existence has done so through some form of war. And in those wars, thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands and sometimes even millions of people have been killed. Now, this is one nasty aspect of history that we just have to swallow. We have to acknowledge. However, every war and every country has some objectives, and they have some methods that are used. There are some laws that are taken into consideration. So war also has laws. Even though war is all about killing people, suppressing the enemy, gaining ground and land and all of that kind of stuff, or defending yourself against people who want to do all of that. It's a very gory and a very, heart-wrenching affair, war. But even war has some laws and some rules that are generally understood by the nations of the world. So if someone says, oh, okay, people want to establish an Islamic state and they're having a war, I'm going to say, yeah, so what? A lot of countries have wanted to have their independence and they fought wars. It's happening today in other parts of the world. That is not a big story within itself. It could be a fight for freedom, independence. It could be striving for a specific way of life, striving to establish a specific set of morals. Okay. But when we talk about this particular group, we first need to understand what the objectives are. If the objective is to practice Islam without any hindrances, if that is an objective, then my question is, what stops you from practicing Islam in the countries that you're already living in? What is stopping you? What's stopping me from practicing Islam in Canada? Not just practicing it, from preaching it, sharing the message of Islam with others. There's nothing stopping me. If the purpose is to have an Islamic government, well, then why don't you bring an Islamic government into power through the political means that are accessible to everyone? If you live in a democratic system and it's all about numbers, it's all about the majority, it's all about taking things through a process, why don't you start a spiritual or religious revolution and get the people to demand that, no, we want a more Islamic system. And there's no need to wage war for that. And if the purpose is just to control a country, well, anyone who wants to control a country has to do so by abiding by certain laws. You want to come into power? Use the channels that are available and try to come into power. But what is puzzling about this is not the fact that you want an Islamic state. What's interesting is that you started this by killing Muslims. How does an Islamic state come into existence by shedding the blood of Muslims? Where does that come in? Even though the Prophet ﷺ tells us, Sibabul mu'mini fusuqun wa qitaluhu kufrun. To curse or swear at another Muslim is a major sin, and to fight against another Muslim is an act of kufr. How can you establish a state of faith when the first step is an act of kufr? Because no matter how noble the objective is, the method also has to be noble. If you have a noble objective, but you use, let's say, to use a very mild word, unjust means to achieve that objective, then the objective is also tainted. A person wants to give charity. Okay? They want to give charity. It's a noble objective. But the money that they want to give, it's all been stolen from people. They've broken into people's homes. They've beat people up, attacked people. stolen their property and say, no, 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 it's all for charity. So by doing so, you have actually tainted your objective and your purpose. Now we're going to doubt your purpose also because your methods are so dubious. They're illegal. So what's happening is you have a very complicated situation in Syria, which is the background of this current issue. So you have the current government or regime, they're ruling with an iron fist, and you have a movement of rebellion to overthrow that government. The rebel movement is, obviously they're all Muslims. Yes, the Western countries are supporting them, to be quite clear. The Western countries are supporting that rebel movement by directly supplying weapons and supplies to them. So you have these people who have united against this government. They want to overthrow it. Most of the world sees that regime as an oppressive regime. There are other opinions as well. Some say that no, it's the rebels that are at fault. Anyway, there is a major battle taking place. Now these rebels, who happen to be Muslims, and by and large they're Sunni Muslims, they have gained a lot of ground. Now you come in, first of all, as partners, and we want to help you in this. We want to overthrow this government too. We've got fighters, we've got this, we've got this. They say, oh good, we could use all the help we can. After a couple of weeks, for a short amount of time, you start attacking the people that you've partnered up with. Literally killing them and taking over the land that they have taken over from the current government. Now, what happens? You have a three-way war. Them fighting them, fighting them. It's this crazy triangle where everyone is killing everyone. So all of the work that was done by the rebels to overthrow the regime, it basically went down the drain. But you've taken it over, not in the name of another political movement, not as as people who want to contribute, but you've come in now as people who've basically stolen that land and that property from these people. You've taken it over, you've taken over all the resources, and you are now at war with A, the rebels, and B, the current regime. Either way, they're all Muslims down there. Is this how you lay the foundation of an Islamic state? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a masjid that was built in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. This masjid was founded by hypocrites. They said that we're building a house on the name of Allah for the sake of establishing salah, and we have this goal and this goal and this goal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarified everything, and He says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مَسْجِدًا ضِرَارًا وَكُفْرًا وَتَفْرِيقًا بَيْنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَإِرْصَادًا لِمَنْ حَارَبَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Those people who have made a masjid to cause harm, to spread disbelief. Is it not the spreading of disbelief when you completely tarnish the image of Islam? Are you not actually promoting kufr? You're actually promoting a rejection of Islam. Tafriqan bain al-mu'mineen, divided the believers? Absolutely. Irsadan liman harab Allah wa rasulah. And you have prepared a ground for those people that are already fighting against Islam. You've helped them. وَلَا يَحْلِفُنَّ إِنْ أَرَدْنَا إِلَّا الْحُسْنَى. They will swear on the name of Allah that our intentions are the purest. Allah says, لَا تَقُمْ فِيهِ أَبَدًا. They asked the Prophet ﷺ to come and pray there as an endorsement. If the Prophet ﷺ went and prayed a salat there, that's it, everyone's going to come there because the Prophet ﷺ himself has prayed a salat there. Allah says, don't even stand there, ever. لَمَسْجِدٌ أُسِّسَ عَلَى التَّقْوَى مِنْ أَوَّلِ يَوْمٍ أَحَقُّ أَن تَقُومَ فِيهِ. that masjid which is founded on the fear of Allah, on piety from the first day, is more deserving that you stand in it. So when the foundation of something is corrupt, then the end result is also going to be corrupt. So how do you justify, I repeat my question, how do you justify an Islamic state that's built on shedding the blood of thousands of Muslims? And that on the name of Islam? It's puzzling. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, then you move into Iraq. The war that they waged in Iraq was, I can say at least the beginning part of it, was a fair and square fight. It was an army against an army. They attacked the Iraqi army. They beat them fair and square. They went head to head with them. They chased them out. They took over all this land. But then, when they see religious minorities, they start attacking them and killing them. How do you justify that? How do you justify attacking and killing religious minorities? Based on what? So that's one very important thing for us to think about. The second thing, in all cultures and societies, when war happens, there are prisoners. Prisoners are used as a medium of exchange. You let go of some of our prisoners, we'll let go of some of yours. And they're used as a bargaining chip. This has always been the case. But since when does it become permissible to take innocent people off of the street and make them your prisoners? People who have no interest in the war. They're not on this side, they're not on that side. They just happen to be there. Like journalists, like humanitarian workers. These people are there to help. The humanitarian workers are there to provide support, assistance, medical care, all of those things to the people that need it. You want to take them as prisoners? You want to take them as prisoners, you want to torture them, you want to do this and then you want to behead them? You're going to use them to make demands? You're taking journalists who are just there to report the happenings. They're not on either side. They're just there, but you want to take them as prisoner. You want to make them go through all these things, and then you want to use them to make demands, and then you want to behead them in public. Based on what? Because you know that, first of all, you don't have access to soldiers from the coalition armies and groups. You know you don't have access to them. And you know that if you kidnapped anyone from the rebels, you kidnap anyone from the Iraqis, no one would give a hoot. They wouldn't care. So you grab the first Westerners you can get your hands on. And you use them as bargaining chips, and you slaughtered them in front of the whole world just to show how barbaric you are. Where are your acts of mercy? We want to give people as much of a benefit of doubt as we can. I told you, you got to clear the propaganda out of your mind. You don't label anybody. We are interested in facts and realities. We're not interested in anyone's propaganda. So, where are your acts of kindness? How the Prophet ﷺ fought his battles, and how he came in and showed kindness to the world. He won their hearts. Where are those acts of generosity? Where is justice? Where is your adherence to laws, ethics, morals? Forget about everyone else. Where is your compassion for fellow Muslims? They are going in and just killing people, executing them literally on the suspicion that, oh, you're a spy. Whole families are killed with a bullet to the head. You would think that someone who wants to establish Islam wants to do it in such a way that gives a good image of Muslims. You would want to think that. Somebody takes the name of Islam and says, we are establishing not just Islam, we're establishing an Islamic state. You would think that that state has something to offer to mankind. You would think that an Islamic state is there to contribute to society to make the world a better place. Instead, you've given the whole world the image that you have gathered a bunch of mercenaries or wannabe mercenaries from all around the world, and your favorite pastime is to kill people. And you're making these huge threats. Yeah, the White House is next. We're going to do this next. We're going to do that next. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you built your own country, built your own state. Shouldn't you be concerned about operating it, running it, and building systems, building infrastructures, fixing the economics of it, building the education, and making it into a place worth living? Wouldn't that be a part of a state? Anyone who goes into a state, wouldn't that be a part of it? That we want to have a place, an exemplary place. We want to have a place that people want to come to. We want to have a place that, that all the beauties of Islam will show. The intelligence of Islam will show. We want a place that captures on all the contributions that Muslims have made to civilization. We want to have all of those contributions here. Muslims have furthered the cause of medicine. Muslims have furthered the cause of so many fields of science. Muslims have furthered the cause of education in so many different ways. Muslims have furthered so many causes. So you say, no, we want to have a place that gathers all of those beautiful contributions of Muslims and displays it to the world. But instead, you're telling people, whoever is listening to you, that, well, you know what? If you can't come here and join us, then kill whatever non-Muslims you can. Whether you're in Canada, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in America. Well, if you can't come down here and join us and fight these infidels, then just kill whatever infidels you can get your hand on. However you can kill them, kill them. You need to push them off a building, do that. You need to strangle them, do that. You need to cut their throat. Now you reduced yourself to nothing but a mad terrorist. Now there's nothing left. You've thrown everything away. With statements like that, whatever little bit of substance you might have had, thrown it all away in the garbage. You're useless. You're a threat to mankind. You're a threat to yourselves. And you have mixed a recipe that is designed to fail. You're destined for failure because you've done nothing right from day one. Why would any sensible Muslim want to be a part of that? Allah has given us religious freedoms all over the world. Muslims worship Allah. They obey Allah. They build masjids. They build schools. They're raising generations of practicing Muslims. And you have just made that 10 times harder. Because every Muslim who is walking through the streets, who is going to school, who is going to work, who is going to apply for work, who is running a business, is now being looked at with an eye of suspicion and doubt. They're being looked at with an unwelcome eye. They're being looked at with this attitude that, why don't you go back to where you came from? What are you doing here? So tell me, have they established Islam, or have they demolished whatever Islam did exist? I've been giving media interviews for the last 2-3 weeks on this. And everyone asks me my view, and I try to always present a balanced view. But when I see the catastrophe that these people are creating for themselves and for Muslims around the world, I cannot help but pain inside about how much damage they're doing. And then I ask you, if the state is going to be Islamic, isn't that going to take a lot of Islamic knowledge? I mean, to build one system, any kind of system, you want to build a transportation system, okay? To build a transportation system, you're going to have to call in experts from all over the place, people who are experts not just in understanding transportation systems, but in designing, making them, running them administratively. You'd have to call in these experts. You'd have to call in these master engineers, the top of the top. We're going to build this system for you. You want to build an education system, you're going to have to call consultants from all over the place and put together an educational system that is tailored to your needs, and you want it to, these are the principles, these are this. There's going to be some work put into it. Any system of the world, it takes the experts of that system in order to give it some rate of success. So where are your Islamic legal experts? Where are the scholars of the world? Can you tell me to turn that off, please? Where are all your muftis? Where are all your Muslim judges, like proper judges, people who have actually run Islamic legal systems? Where are all the scholars of the world? Where are they? Simple answer to that is that no scholar of the world acknowledges this as an Islamic state, as an Islamic project, as an Islamic anything, much less accept it as a khilafah, as a caliphate. So you've got no academic basis for this. In other words, you're picking up text of the Quran, of hadith, and interpreting them the way you choose, placing them in any context that suits you today, and that's it. And you have deemed yourselves to be the ultimate authority in understanding, interpreting Islamic texts, and in applying them. So you should be clear in your minds that this is a project that has not been very well thought out. The people that should have been consulted have not been consulted. The work that should have been put into it has not been put into it. It's nothing but fighting. It's just fighting and killing. That's all it is. Fighting, killing, fighting, killing, fighting, killing. And that's it. They're trying to set up little courts. They're trying to set up systems of zakat. They're trying to do these things. It's nice. But you know what? You don't have any base, you don't have any foundation. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah does not mean you are going to wage a war against the world. Yes, there are certain things you have to fight for. Absolutely. You have to fight for them. There are many things people in the world have fought for, but there's a way of fighting. And what hurts here is that in the process of fighting, you've killed so many of your own people. You've killed so many Muslims. They don't mean a thing. Their blood does not mean a thing to you. Even though the blood of a Muslim is supposed to be something very, very, very sacred for another Muslim. You don't care. You're out there executing people left, right, and center. Now I'm going to give you another perspective. Shift gears for a second. Where did these people come from? And how did they have the nerve, how did they have the courage to do something like this? So I can be very honest in saying that these people are a product of major, major mistakes made by Western countries. Huge blunders. And I've said this to the media people, I've said this to the politicians as well. I said, let's go back a few decades to the time when Iran had their own democratically elected government. You helped overthrow that government and bring in your own people. You thought it's going to help you control the country. It caused chaos. Then a war raged between Iran and Iraq, in which you armed and supplied Iraq. For 7 years, you helped Iraq fight Iran. Elsewhere in the world, Russia had invaded Afghanistan. And you armed the Afghanis and supplied them and trained them and fed them so that they could kick out the Russians. And the people that stood up to do that, the people that volunteered for that militia, were students of madrasas. They're the ones who said, we will do anything to save our country, to protect our freedom, and drive these Russians out. You armed them, you gave them everything. That's why they're called the Taliban. Students, Taliban, students. They were all students of madrasas. When they successfully drove out the Russians, they became the heroes of the world. Pick up any Western magazine or newspaper from that era, and you will see how beautifully they have represented the Taliban. How heroic these people are, how brave they are. They didn't care, they did this, they did that, they did this, they did that. When these same Taliban were powerful enough and had the confidence of the people also to run the whole country, they took that step. They made their own mistakes in that process. But then they became your enemy. Because they don't have any use for you anymore. They're Muslim and they don't have any use for you, so we don't want them. Now they're a problem. Now you're trying to fund other people, those who were initially cowards in that battle against Russia, those that hid, stayed away from the front lines, and let these mullahs, pick up Kalashnikovs and go and fight for their lives. Those people that stayed behind all this time, you now started funding them and drive these crazy mullahs out somehow. And then you presented Taliban as the most backwards, extremist, radical sect of Islam. And you kept on presenting that until Al-Qaeda showed up. And then Al-Qaeda became the biggest and baddest show in town. We're going to take them out, we're going to take them out. You've all heard the rhetoric. And for the sake of, supposedly, I'm just saying what the official story is supposed to be, that for the sake of stomping out Al-Qaeda, you went in and bombed the hell out of Afghanistan. You carpet bombed them. You destroyed tens of thousands of acres of perfectly fine land. And you killed thousands of civilians. Thousands and thousands of civilians. I can say tens of thousands of civilians. Whether you accept it or not, it doesn't matter. You're going to lie about it anyways. Your soldiers committed atrocities. You destroyed whatever infrastructure existed in that country. You tore it apart. And as a trump card for your political campaigns, you said, we're going to bring our soldiers back home. First, the trump card is we're going to send our soldiers over there. We're going to bash the heck out of these people. And that helped you win an election. But for the next politician, you saw the political climate is otherwise. So the big rhetoric was, we're going to bring our soldiers back home. They don't need to be over there. And so that worked. Politicians don't really have any deen. Their deen is their votes. Whatever gets them their votes is their deen. So, in the other part of the world, back to Iraq, when Iraq threatens to take over Kuwait, I'm talking back in 1991. You went in because Iraq said, you know what, America, we don't really need you anymore. We're doing our own thing. We're okay. We've got our own oil. We've got this, that. Said, oil? Whoa, wait a minute. This was all about the oil. What do you mean you got your own oil? That's supposed to be our oil. We're going to go in and bomb the heck out of you anyways. So they go in and they start bombing not military stations. They went in and bombed the entire city of Baghdad. I was listening to the radio at that time, on that day in 1991, when the coalition forces struck Baghdad. And after 1 hour, like they're giving this play-by-play of what's happening, what they've attacked now, what they've bombed now. After 1 hour of the attack on Baghdad, they announced on the radio that the official statement from the armed forces, from the coalition forces, that we have used more firepower in this 1 hour of bombing Iraq than we did in the whole war against Japan in Hiroshima. In 1 hour. They weren't bombing no military or Air Force bases. They were bombing hospitals, high schools, residential areas. They bombed anything and everything that their bombs could fall on. Call that an achievement? Anyway, the war went on. Eventually these guys came back. Saddam Hussein lived on. And then you made up an excuse that, oh, they've got weapons of mass destruction, we're going back in. There's no such thing as any report verifying a weapon of mass destruction. And the hypocrisy of it is that why can Israel have weapons of mass destruction? Why is Israel allowed to be armed with nuclear weapons and Iraq can't be? Give us one reason. I mean, just look at the sheer hypocrisy of it. Why don't you disarm every single country then in the world that has it? Starting with America. Weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. So you go in and you bomb the heck out of it. Once you did that, you created a massive power vacuum. You destroyed the country. You got nothing from there but oil, which is what you were after. You got the huge contracts of rebuilding the infrastructure that you just destroyed. And you have left a vacuum in that country that resulted in 4 years of civil war in that country. Sectarian violence. Pure civil war raged for 4 years. Where were you then? Where were you? You were nowhere. You spent those 4 years counting your bills that you had just made. You allow Israel to bomb Palestine. That's it. They have this carte blanche. You just go in and bomb whatever you want. Don't worry, no one's going to say anything. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll sweep it under the rug. So who are these ISIS people? They're a result of all of these huge blunders made by the West. You have created a group of people, a class of people that have absolutely nothing to lose. You've already killed their families. You've taken away everything that their generations of forefathers worked for. You've taken it all away. You've bombed them. You've destroyed them. You've jailed them. If you were to read about the stories, what happened to people in Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq? It's huge. It's all over. Just read, do a little bit of research. What happened in that jail? The atrocities that happened with the Iraqi prisoners there by the Americans. You've created that animosity. You've nurtured it. You fed it and fed it and fed it until it lost control. So is this what it's about? Create an enemy, keep an enemy, because as long as the public has an enemy that they're focused on, you have their support. When you lose an enemy, you lose the support of people. There's no purpose to fight for. Keep people in a constant state of fear. Make sure you have an enemy that looks threatening enough that, oh no, we better go in after them. And all that rhetoric that happens every single time, like they're going in right now, we're going to bomb them. It's the same rhetoric. I can trace it back to 1991. Same lines. It's so hilarious how unoriginal these politicians are. They are so not original. They are so not creative. The same bloody rhetoric. And it gets the people every single time. Compare the speeches of George Bush the senior. Not George W. Bush that waged the war on Afghanistan and Iraq. His dad, his pops, who waged the first war on Iraq. Listen to his talks and his rhetorics and read his statements. And read the statements of his son when he went into Iraq and Afghanistan the second time. And read the statements of the leaders today. So, I put everything in perspective in front of you. And I told the media people that the Western leadership needs to take a very close look at the way they're trying to solve problems, or even are they even trying to solve them? It doesn't look like it. You make a mistake once, then you correct it. You went after the Taliban, you got Al-Qaeda. You went after Al-Qaeda, you got ISIS. What are you going to create next? You can go in and bomb the hell out of Iraq and Syria and do whatever you want, but don't think that this problem is going to end. It's only going to get worse because you've created more people that you've destroyed. Whatever happened to diplomacy? You talk about democracy, you talk about diplomacy, that's only for you and your people. The people on the other side are human beings. You don't have anyone that can appeal to their sense of intellect. You don't have anyone that can bargain and negotiate with them. Say, no. We don't want to bargain with terrorists. We don't want to negotiate with terrorists. Well, they're human beings first. If you don't want to bargain with them, then why should they bargain with you? Why should they listen to you? Just yesterday, one of the political leaders here was telling me that way back when, like 11 years ago, when they were going in to Afghanistan to attack it, one of the political leaders here in Canada suggested that, look guys, this is not going to get us anywhere. We cannot solve this problem until we all sit together at one table and discuss it. We just can't. We need to know what they want. And we need to know that, do we have a common interest? Is there some middle ground that we can reach? And so the moment he said that, he was labeled, this political leader who has now passed away, he was labeled Taliban Jack. He was a Taliban supporter. Anyone who talks about diplomacy is brushed aside like that. What do you hope to achieve in the world? You want to do everything through brute strength? Okay, fine, go ahead, do it. So I don't justify or endorse or support anything that ISIS is doing. I condemn it in the strongest words. But the Western world is no angels either. And maybe these enemies were made for, maybe they're just cut out for each other. Honestly. Got a bunch of goofs over here, you got a bunch of goofs over here too. وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا. Someone does dhulm, Allah puts another zalim over him. And you do dhulm, Allah puts another zalim over them. You keep on doing dhulm in the world, Allah is going to keep giving you bigger and bigger zalims. So, as Muslims, we need to first sift through all of this mess and realize that what these people have done out there in Syria and Iraq, it goes against many, many Islamic principles. They've broken too many basic core Islamic ethics and principles. Even in terms of beliefs, they call everyone a kafir, just like that. That's it. You don't believe, you're not with us? You're a kafir. You're not a Muslim anyways, we're going to kill you. Starting by shedding the blood of Muslims, unbelievable. Going in and killing religious minorities for no reason, unacceptable. And then challenging the whole world and telling Muslims all over the world to reach out and kill the next non-Muslim they can find. That's it. Like that's the line. And after that, once you reach that line, you are nothing but a dumb, insane terrorist. You've got nothing to offer, and we have nothing to do with you. It's that clear, it's that simple. If there are people doing evil on the other side, is it evil that rectifies evil? Is it evil that overcomes evil? No, it isn't. It's good that overcomes evil. And after that, destroying the image of Muslims, after 9/11, it was just starting to come back together. People who were out in the world at that time doing things, they know what they had to go through. I remember walking onto planes dressed like this and everyone just froze. Oh my God, this plane is not going to land, is it? I remember getting those looks. This is like 3-4 days after 9/11, same week. I remember going into schools to give talks and just seeing fear, like, oh my God, does this guy have a suicide vest or something? People in airports giving you these glances. So many people at that time who were trying to get jobs, people just sidelined them. Muslim businesses that went through so many difficulties. Our youngsters getting beat up for no reason by racist people. Oh, you Muslim terrorists, we're going to beat the heck out of you. So many Muslims got beat up. Poor Sikhs got shot up because these idiots thought they were Muslims. They shot them up. So, really, thanks a lot, guys, for making it happen all over again, but in a much, much worse way. So if this is the only message people have, that the West is evil and kill them, well, I'm sorry, that's not much of a message. There's no substance there. So we have a couple of duties. First of all, we need to maintain our loyalty to our deen. Our deen is solid. Our deen is flawless. It is extremely, extremely powerful. Our loyalty to deen doesn't change no matter how the world sees us. These are our tests. No matter if the world welcomes us, or they reject us, or whatever happens, it happens. Our loyalty is to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The second thing is, we cannot morally, emotionally, verbally support people who are proving themselves to be the enemies of mankind. Even if they're doing it on the name of Islam, we can't. Don't be impressed by flashy videos and, flashy marketing tools. If Islam was all about just killing people, then what kind of religion would that be? What kind of way of life would that be? And if you think that in order to live your life as a Muslim, you've got to go around killing innocent people, then, sorry, you have no idea what Islam is about. But on the other side, you and I need to position ourselves in society in such a way and in such places where we can influence these kinds of decisions that are being made on behalf of the West. We have a role to play here. If that means getting involved in governments, get involved in governments. Get involved in politics. Get a good education. Make yourself worthy enough to be listened to. If you spend all your time just playing around and messing around, passing time, you're never going to be worthy enough so that the world will listen to you one day. Build your skills, build your knowledge, build your education, and build your deen, build your iman. And tomorrow you guys will be influencing foreign policies. You guys will be influencing these big decisions that sometimes are so wrong. Tomorrow you guys are the ones who should be speaking in parliament on behalf of the Muslims. That is the need of the time. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our insight, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlighten our hearts with guidance and with the true understanding of Islam, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to discern and distinguish right from wrong, haqq from batil. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.